Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I apologize for not posting in the past week. I had an urgent family matter to take care of, but I'm back again. And what topic to discuss this week? And what better topic to discuss this week than the security deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran, brokered by China? And for that, I'm hosting today special guest. Her name is Fereshteh Sadeghi. Fereshteh, you are an Iranian journalist and observer based in Tehran, and you publish in different platforms, including Al Monitor, if I'm not mistaken, and you're also a former Al Jazeera English producer.
Yes, thank you very much. Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. You actually published an interesting thread on Twitter about this security deal. Guys, the link of her Twitter account is in the description below, and also the thread you can go and check by yourself as well. But we know that China brokered a security deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and these two countries are considered major regional powers in the region, who were in the past decades, let's say, they were not in good terms. This is the most diplomatic way to describe it, right? But now China brokered this deal and there's so much talk about it. Can you please explain the details of the deal and why did you call it a security deal in the first place in your Twitter thread? And why does it matter for the people of the region?
Okay, talks between Iran and Saudi Arabia, actually ties between Iran and Saudi Arabia were severed in 2015 after Saudi rulers executed Shia cleric Sheikh Namr, and angry Iranians stormed the embassy building in Tehran and consulate building in Mashhad. Following that one, Saudi Arabia withdrew all its diplomats. So for the past 7 years, the relations were sour, and Yemen war added to the to the animosity that already existed, and Iran's support for the Houthis, or better to say Ansarullah, in Yemen added another dimension to this hostility. But the two countries felt that they need to somehow resume ties with each other. So from 2020, almost 2020, Iraq and Oman, both of them were involved in some sort of indirect talks between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Mostly it was Iraq. Several rounds of security talks had been held in Iraq. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, we heard that it was China who took the last mile and took the credit, better to say. Iranians, according to what we hear that President Raisi last month, when he visited China, President Xi offered him that he could mediate between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and President Raisi gave the green light. But we can say most of the work had been done by Iraq and Oman. But the point about it, and why I call it a security deal, is that it seems that whatever happened in Oman and in Iraq, in Baghdad, were talks between diplomats. So they say they were security talks, but more or less, they were talks between diplomats, Saudi diplomats, Iranian diplomats. The difference here was that Iran's national security advisor, Ali Shamkhani, he met directly with the Saudi, and mostly in Oman and in Baghdad, they were sometimes indirect talks. But this time around, they were security advisors of both countries. They met with each other in silence, and no news outlet was aware of it. We know that talks took about 5 days, lasted for 5 days, and nobody understood that these talks are going on. So it means that they were really secretive talks. And so the first point is that they were security talks because security advisors were involved. The second one is that Ali Shamkhani, that's to me, actually, that's my understanding, that Ali Shamkhani had the blessing of Iran's leader when he went to China, to Beijing, to at least clinch this deal. Mm-hmm. And maybe the Saudis had the same situation.
Actually, to be honest with you, I was myself surprised by the deal. I woke up in the morning checking my Twitter feed, and one of the first tweets was like, Iran and Saudi Arabia, they signed on a deal brokered by China. It's like, what did I miss? When did this happen? Right, in the past weeks or
Yeah,
months, we
exactly.
didn't see
Yeah,
this coming, because all the talk was like, okay, Saudis are talking to the Syrians through security channels, but Iran, that was really surprising. And for me, this is a good news, to be honest with you. But on the other
yes.
hand, we see the reaction from the neoconservatives in Washington and Israeli voices. They are not welcoming this deal. How do you see this reaction from, let's say, the deep state in the United States and also the Israelis? They're very concerned about this deal between the Saudis and the Iranians.
I think the most important concern that they have is that they don't want Iran to be out of isolation, the isolation that the United States has imposed on Iran. And this isolation is affecting Iran in all the state matters and foreign policy. So as long as this isolation exists, pressure also, diplomatic pressure also exists. And then we can say animosity between Iran and its southern neighbors on the other side of the Persian Gulf. Really, it benefits just the United States, who can sell more weapons to them, and for Israelis to demonize Iran and to show it as the common enemy of the Arab world and Israel and the West. So when there is a rapprochement, because we know that, and we should accept that, rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia means some problems between Iran and Bahrain will be solved. Yemen crisis maybe could be resolved easily or much easier than before. Or, for example, the standoff that exists in Lebanon between two rival camps, that
Yes.
one may end soon. So it affects, I think, the region positively.
Mm-hmm. I will share with you a tweet. Actually, it's shared by a woman called Zainab Reboua, and she's part of an NGO or a think tank that is pro-American. And she argues that in this tweet that China is going after key ports, not just ensuring its trade and commerce ventures, but also slowly growing a military presence. At some point, US influence in the region will simply shrink, and Americans will not be able to contain the threats coming from Iran and its proxies. Do you share her sentiments that this China brokered deal may be a game changer in the Middle East? Does it undermine the US hegemony in the region and abroad? Or does it really constitute a threat against the American presence in the region?
Yeah, it speaks of China's military presence. We are not sure about it. China is more or less in the Middle East looking for its economic interests rather than military presence. Maybe in future it may have some bases in some countries, we don't know. But for the time being, I just can agree that yes, it undermines US's final say, because we like it or we dislike it. US has a sort of say or a heavy say in the region among the Arab countries, Saudi Arabia and its allies. And when China comes to another player, enters the region, it affects US's interest, especially given that it had managed to resolve the issues between two neighboring countries, Iran and Saudi Arabia. And at the same time, it seems that actually, I'm not an expert of Saudi affairs between Saudi and American affairs, but I feel that with this, with allowing China to have this mediating role, the Saudis also sending a signal to Americans that you are not only people which we can rely on. And there is another point. China is trying to somehow invest in Iran. Iran is now these days, or since the start of President Raisi's term, Iran is following a look east policy. And one of the countries that is involved in this look east policy is China. But China was somehow reluctant about investment in Iran, given that these animosities, these tensions persist in the region. And it also wants to invest in Saudi Arabia as well. So if it can bring these two neighbors together, at least they won't undermine each other. So it is, the return of calm to this region is also to the Chinese financial and economic interests.
Actually, I was writing an article today and I argued that this deal is definitely good news for the Middle East. I'm now reading it. Unless there are powers who want to keep the region in endless conflicts, and we can detect these powers by simply checking their reactions to the China brokered deal. For example, the reaction from neoconservatives and Israeli voices to the Saudi-Iranian agreement makes something very clear. They are terrified by the idea of Iran and Gulf states getting along. Some may argue that their interests are in Saudi-Iranian relations remaining hostile and not peace and stability. But the world is changing rapidly and emerging powers are increasingly playing important mediating roles separate from the United States. And deals like these will pave the way for energy-rich countries to join the BRICS economic bloc and rapidly distance themselves from the NATO bloc, which presented nothing but destruction, misery, and underdevelopment to the rest of the world. So the point here is, for a long time, especially after World War II, and more especially after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the divide and conquer strategy of the United States in the region was very apparent, and it was a very beneficial strategy for the United States for selling arms and also adopting the Carter Doctrine, which is securing the energy routes in the Middle East. And this kept the region underdeveloped. There was so much conflicts. Some of them are proxies, some of them are direct, turning one country against another. I'm a little bit now optimistic because I can see some reason is prevailing finally in the region, especially by leaders who were historically revolving in the circle of the United States. And by doing so, they were generating new conflicts in the region. I mean, let's not forget that only a decade ago in Syria, 500,000 people died because of the proxy war that the United States initiated. And these regional countries that we speak about now, for example, Saudi Arabia, they were an important instrumental force in destroying Syria. And for example, Bandar bin Sultan, when he took over the intelligence apparatus in 2013, he asked for $2 trillion to remove President Assad from power. He couldn't secure all this money. But we're speaking about billions and billions, tens of billions of dollars invested in the region for destruction instead of development. And I'm Syrian. Like, I have my disagreements with Iran or the way the Iranian ruling system is, but who am I to intervene in the Iranian affairs? I'm Syrian, right? At the end, I want good relations between Syria and Iran, and I want good relations between Syria and Saudi Arabia. I want the region to be developed because development and economic integration between these countries will minimize wars and destruction. And this is in the interest of the people.
Yes, actually, you're right. And for example, today I saw that, from Saudi Arabia, they were tweeting that Saudi carrier, Saudi Airlines, has resumed flights to Mashhad, from two cities, from Dammam and from Riyadh to Mashhad. Definitely, they will also fly to Tehran. So it seems that the opening of these routes usually opens again. Actually, I think between Iranian people and Saudi people, there were no animosity. It was usually the states, the governments that they put at risk people's lives, people's prosperity. But I think it's a very good development. If actually we have, but we are all optimistic and hopefully everything goes well. But still, we have 2 months because the two countries have decided to start. I think they don't say it, but I think it's a trial period. According to what we have heard, and the details of this agreement have been kept secret. But what Iranian media, some people speculate, or they say that, for example, Iran has asked Saudi Arabia to stop supporting and financing anti-Iran International channel. And maybe in these 2 months, Iran is also trying to see if Saudi Arabia met its end of the bargain. Saudis also will observe Iranians if they kept their own end of the bargain, and we don't know the details. So let's hope that by the end of these 2 months, diplomatic relations will be resumed.
You know why I'm optimistic? Not because it's based on emotional perspectives, but because I know, for example, for a fact that Iran doesn't have an interest in destabilizing Saudi Arabia. But on the other hand, I also know that Saudi Arabia has a project that they want to achieve in 2030, and this is their own economic project. And similarly, in Turkey, they have another project, which is to make Turkey an economic hub, an energy hub. And this is with the support of Russia. So these countries have economic interests now in stability, and that's why they are rushing for diplomacy and agreements in the region. But speaking of these agreements, do you think that such an agreement between Saudi Arabia and Iran would maybe fasten a rapprochement between Syria and Saudi Arabia, or this is like separate case?
Actually, yesterday I saw that there were some reports that Saudi Arabia would like both Iran and Syria to attend, maybe Iran as a guest, to attend a next meeting of the Arab World or Arab Summit or something like that. You know, it is believed that in Iran, among politicians, it was believed that, and it is believed that Syria is Iran's window to the Arab world. At least during the 1980s war, it was like that. Syria was a great ally of Iran. And even after the 1980s war, I mean, Iran-Iraq war, Syria remained the same. So it seems that these are with each other, these are allies. Iran and Syria, Iran would attend the quartet meeting of Russia, Turkey, Syria,
Yes.
and I mean, Iran will be the fourth member. So it seems that now they are trying to join each other, join hands. And when, for example, it is in the Arab world, Syria would try to take Iran to make amends with the Arab world. Iran would do its best for Syria to have a role in maybe with its own allies. Actually, they are allies, but maybe they have a more, I think, a stronger role, let's say. So maybe it facilitate Syria's joining the Arab world and getting its own position, previous position. Hopefully, when the problems in Lebanon is solved, Syria naturally goes into those affairs again. I mean, the positive affairs.
Actually, the thing is between, for example, the problems that always pop up between Syria and other Gulf countries is always about Iran. If there is any secret meeting or security meeting or diplomatic meeting, all Gulf countries always raise this issue. Your relationship with Iran is a threat for us. And now it's good that if they agree with Iran, at least this card would be also taken away from the Gulf countries, because let's be honest, Syria and Iran are not going to break up their strategic relationship. And what happened a decade ago in Syria was the best proof that were it not for the allies of Syria, such as Iran and Russia, country would have collapsed completely to ISIS and other terrorist groups in the country. So when it comes to existential threats or all-out war on Syria, Syria is a strong regional country, or was, but also cannot survive against tens of thousands of multinational terrorists coming to the country, funded, supported by the CIA and also through the Turkish territories. So if something like this would be repeated in the future, or in any an invasion of Syria by Israel or the United States, Syria cannot fight alone in such a war. And the people in the Gulf, we understand their concerns on one hand, but on the other hand, Syria is always targeted. And Syria is targeted because of its foreign policy, because of its resistance to the American hegemony. So there is always a chance that such conflicts would be repeated. So how can you ask Syria to break this relationship, which is based on trust and strategic interest between the both sides, when we are not addressing the core of the issue, which is, or the elephant in the room, which is the American presence in the region, which is truly, that is causing all these conflicts after the Second World War. And we have seen in the First Gulf War, the Second Gulf War, the invasion of Iraq, Afghanistan, regime change wars in Libya, trying to overthrow the government in Iran, and we've seen hundreds of thousands of people perished in the region, right? But now we have China, presenting itself as an alternative. And I would like to mention a few things here. The Chinese diplomatic and security activities in the past few weeks. China criticized the United States' long-term violation of international law, and especially the theft of Syria's oil and wheat. They mentioned it. Second, China inaugurated the International Organization for Mediation. Imagine, it's like this is the role of the UN, and China is now forming an organization to mediate between countries. China issued Global Security Initiative concept paper. China's Xi, he will speak with Zelensky and he will meet with President Putin next month. In your opinion, what are Beijing's goals and priorities in the realm of the international relations and this changing dynamics on the international system?
Number one, I think I have to correct you. The elephant in the room in this region is not the US, it is Israel. And it's a common enemy, at least for Iran and Syria, and maybe some Arab citizens, not necessarily Arab countries. And for China, I think for now, as far as we see, China is after its economic, is seeking economic goals. And for economic goals and for investment, you need a calm region. I mean, whatever it is, a calm region, a calm country. Imagine Saudis, for example, are complaining about, or Saudis or maybe some other Arab countries in the Persian Gulf, they are complaining about Iranian drones. Or, for example, Iranians attacking, or they accuse, according to what they say, accusing Iran of attacking ships. So as long as the situation is like that, nobody takes his or her money and invest in a country or in a region. So even if it is not Iran, if the same thing happens to Saudi Arabia, as long as it is worried about the security of the Persian Gulf, security of its ships, accusations, counter accusations. But when these problems are settled out, and then these disputes, two sides decide to keep their own line and then respect each other, not interfere in each other's affairs, which about Saudi Arabia is maybe by not supporting Iran International anymore, and for Iran maybe not issuing statements or what. I'm just quoting, Saudis and some Arab expert that they say Iran is meddling in our affairs, whatever. When all these disputes are resolved, then the Chinese or even maybe other countries, maybe European countries, will be more eager to come to invest, and it would lead to prosperity of everybody. And usually these investments, when they expand, they will reach Syria, they will reach Lebanon, they will reach they benefit all the regional countries, not necessarily just Iran and Saudi Arabia. It would be good for everybody.
Yeah, actually, such a deal, in my opinion, is very important for the people of the region. And if you want to know who is unhappy with security, stability, prosperity in the region, we can see their statements and actions on the ground now. And I remember the quote or one of the interviews of Norman Finkelstein. He once said the strategy of the United States is to put the Arabs in their place, and I would say put the Muslims in their place and keep them in their place in this regard. And I'm happy that finally the leaders of the region are waking up to this reality, because the people, as you mentioned, they don't hate each other. They're not born to hate each other. It's the media, it's the politicians which turn the people against each other. It's a divide and conquer strategy. It's a very historically, it's a very apparent strategy that governments do, but also international powers do. And I think, especially after World War I, when the French and the Brits, they divided the region on different lines of influence, that was a divide and conquer strategy. When they turned Iran and Iraq against each other, it was a divide and conquer strategy. And then the Gulf countries against Iran, it's again a divide and conquer strategy. So we're living now, maybe we could live a time that this strategy would be ineffective, because we needed leaders to act according to the interests of the people, and I'm happy for that. And I was very happy, Ms. Fereşte Sadeghi, to have you on Syriana Analysis and to listen to your insight. I'm sure the audience of Syriana Analysis also appreciate your insight, because we want to hear different opinions from different parts of the world, and especially a journalist like yourself. You're based in Iran and you are monitoring the activities or the diplomatic activity in the region. So thank you so much again for being my guest.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure. And guys, I will put the Twitter link of Sadeghi in the description below. Please follow her and just listen what she says, read what she says. Maybe you change your mind, maybe you disagree with her. And that's the essence, in my opinion, of human development. We agree or disagree, but we keep it with respect with each other. And that's what I'm promoting on Syriana Analysis. And if you want to support my independent journalistic work, you can become a patron, or there are different means in the description below. And see you next time.